Jamie, so big question to start with. Why do you do what you do?
Well, I like helping people. I think entrepreneurs naturally start with that, and we normally, start with living a problem and trying to bring a solution to market. Um,
Mm,
I'm self-driven, so it matches entrepreneurship. I think you have to be self-driven in entrepreneurship.
mm,
Um, I generally do what I do with the business that I'm doing at the moment to solve problems for a problem that I've lived. So I'm
okay.
100% passionate about solving problems for other people. Um, you know, I basically get to go to bed with a dream, which is the vision, and
Hmm.
for the business, and get to wake up with purpose. So I can't think of anything better to live out, really.
So the thing that you said, which is really interesting there, is I've lived the problem. So one of the key things for any founder is really trying to crystallize the problem that they're trying to solve. So in for you guys, what exactly is the problem that you thought, you know what, there's a business here, I need to spin it up, I need to go and solve it?
Well, the initial thought process behind it was that tradespeople, we're not particularly academic. We don't particularly come from a background where the academic skill set, so to speak, is something that we, took on board or delved into. Um, and the communication side of running a trade business is huge, like any business or any form of communication around the world. So for me, communication is what, you know, potentially lack of communication and breakdown of communication is what causes bad relationships. It's what causes world wars. It's what causes businesses to not communicate to their customers.
Mm,
So really, the tradesperson's communication skills were at a certain level, and they're working for homeowners who are academic most of the time. These guys have jobs to be able to afford a tradesperson and pay for that service. They have the sort of skill set and attributes that perhaps a tradesperson didn't, but then they've got to work together.
mm.
So it was kind of like a mishmatch in communication styles, linked to um, really professions, to be honest.
Okay.
And that communication gap is bridged by an application that helps them communicate with homeowners.
Okay. So so it sounds as that, I don't know if I'm making too much of a leap here, but is it that non-academic people uh, can't or do you have to be academic to make a successful business, or is that complete opposite of what you've your experience?
No, because in the tradespeople space, they would be exceptionally good at their job, and actually, it's their work and their job that keeps them in business and gets them business. So they do a good job, they get recommended to that client's friends and family, and they go and do another good job. But
Yeah.
that's only half the battle, to be fair, um, from that job having a smooth transition.
Mm,
It's half the battle in winning business in the first place by communicating yourself to a potential client, firstly to win the business, really. Um, Someone once told me that get really good at communication, because the minute you open your mouth, you tell the world who you really are.
hmm.
And everything to do with really, as a tradesperson, they don't think they are, but you are selling yourself.
Mm,
The minute that you walk into someone's house, they are pretty much judging you straight away. So everything you say in that meeting, they will evaluate it, but everything you send as well, they will evaluate it. And that's what we help with, really. Quote is a solution that helps bridge the communication gap. So we help tradespeople send really tight quality comms. Within the software, there's pre-written content by copywriters.
Okay.
And it's really that content that bridges the communication gap between homeowner and tradesperson.
Okay. Okay. So from you hinted at it. So your experience was that you were a tradesperson, and then you found that there was the bit that was lacking was the ability to effectively communicate with the end customer, or they put simply, like, the tradesperson wasn't necessarily putting their best foot forward because they weren't a great communicator. They're very good at their job, but they weren't very good at the sales bit. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's broken down into two things. So it's speaking, as we are now, and it's written language. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say, if it was out of the two, I would say speaking is probably a very good attribute. You wouldn't be in the business if you couldn't, or sell yourself, so to speak. But then that has to translate into the words, which is what they send to win a job, i.e. a quote or an estimate. The communication in between the project, do they have everything at their disposal to communicate effectively with the homeowner? Because don't forget, they're extremely time short anyway, actually doing the work. So what tends to happen is bad comms is spat out, basically, because they're up against it time wise. Predominantly hours on the job, and then coming home having to do admin, paperwork, stuff like that. And when I looked at the other solutions on the market, so first business plan was written in 2017. If I go back and look at that business plan, sometimes I do, by the way, because there's just some nuggets in there that you go, wow, that's amazing. Like, that's exactly what we're doing now. And then there's bits in there where you go, we didn't get to do that, but now it makes sense why we didn't do it.
Yeah.
It is a very, very rough business plan. It was written on our old house's kitchen table.
Yeah.
Took me a couple of days to put it together, but it's one of those plans that you sort of sometimes pick up every 6 months and go, yeah, there's stuff in there that's so relevant to today.
So what, on that piece, can you remember the specific time where the light bulb went off and you just think, right, there's a business here? Or was there a specific instance that you can remember, or was it a cumulative effect of lots of micro instances all compounding together?
I think micro instances, and those micro instances, to be fair, it's very interesting because people look at my journey and go, well, you wrote that business plan in 2017. 2018, you approached a tech incubator. 2019, you reached out for investment, and you connected with somebody who knew your story in the industry and had a sort of background in what we're trying to do, and signed a contract. But people would say, well, you've been going 6-7 years, you've got an MVP, you've got X amount of customers, but the journey really to get to that point is way before that. And the signs of knowing to even start that first business plan is probably over a 15-year period. For example, my customer base would say to me, we don't receive anything like this from other tradespeople.
Okay.
And that sort of 10-year-old comment, 2010, and you're thinking, well, that's interesting. Why is that? And I worked closely with a copywriter, met her at a networking event, and she created comms for me that transformed the business, which is now within AppyQuote. So the journey really, and the sort of micro bits were before that. And then we got to a point where, let's just say I've always been an ideas man, shall we say, from a young age. So obviously painter and decorator, creative. I studied interior design as well. I did well at art at school, but the ideas have always been there. And but having gone through this journey, one of the things that I now realize that it's not about ideas. It's actually about executing them, and the execution is hard. So, and I think when you're in an idea state, you tend to have this aura and good feeling about you that, you know, I'm a guy full of ideas. This feels amazing. Like, all right, there's other people out there, entrepreneurs and stuff like that. But in my circle, it wasn't really a conversation. But
Mm,
it's not about the ideas. And finally, I
mm,
got to a point in 2017. I was 34 then, 35, and I just thought, you know, it's time to just to go for something and finally execute something, because there were other ideas before AppyQuote linked to the trade. For
mm,
example, one of them was a product, and I'd had meetings with product designers, manufacturers, and it was just a transition to moving towards actually executing something. That, you know, there wasn't really going to be AppyQuote, to be fair, in that sort of 2 year period.
mm.
Um, and you go down a number of channels and you meet certain people, which swings you in a certain direction. You know, you stay open-minded, and that was it really. So I did read that the sort of optimal time for people to really execute is the age of 35. And
Okay.
I think maybe that's linked to what I said, but it's also linked to it's a good time in your life that you've built up a fair bit of experience. You've built up a
Yeah.
network. So in this journey, I've lent quite heavily on the network built up in a 15-year period. So that's one of the
Yeah.
things I would say to people is, you know, start building up your network, start networking with people if you're in your teens or 20s, because they will come back around later down your life when you need them.
Yeah, I think that's really sage advice. It was something that was mentioned to me by a CEO not that long ago, actually, and he sort of broke his career down into a few different sections. I think he's in his late 40s now, and he kind of said, "Well, my 20s, or sort of 21 to 30, said those were my apprentice years,
Yeah,
and then 30 to 39 was my accumulation years, and then 40 to 49 have been my management years." And he says they're very clearly defined sections of life. And I think that some founders think that you can sort of jump straight into a very successful business at really, really young, which there are some examples that you can probably count on one hand, excluding a thumb, of how that's worked. But the amount of people where that hasn't quite worked for, because they don't have the network or the experience or the credibility. I mean, to
yeah,
your point, as soon as you step over that threshold into someone's home, it might be a new home, newly married couple, something like that, just bought their first house, a massive, great, big emotional investment, and you want to go and create the house into a home, right?
yeah,
And so, if you're coming in and you are someone who's experienced and you have your portfolio that you can showcase and you are articulate and you can, as to your point, communicate well with the end customer, surely that's going to resonate much more deeply with them than someone who's necessarily just starting out, doesn't have a network, doesn't have a portfolio. Everyone's got to start somewhere, but a network is a very, very important thing for sure. I agree.
yeah, it is. And you know, I would say, I mean, in terms of mistakes and failure, you know,
Mm,
um, I think that's always going to happen. The key is how quickly can you pick yourself back up.
mm,
For example, we have days at the moment where, you know, we'll end one day and we'll go, wow, that was amazing. Something's happened at 9:30 at night. You know, you've had
mhm.
a couple of demo sign-ups and you're sharing it with your co-founder and you're
Yeah.
celebrating that. And the next night, you know, somebody's uh, product has broken and they've got a bug in the system.
Mhm.
So the sort of daily routine linked to what we're doing is a mindset of sort of a 20-year period of getting knocked down and getting back up again, which has
Mhm.
really helped to be resilient, including, you know, starting the decorating business and having a very tough sort of 3 to 5 years, because, you know, the homeowner would maybe smell you out that you're inexperienced. They would sniff that out and play on it, and which is not fair, linked to age and sort of experience, but that's what it's like. So you've got to be resilient in the early days, teens, early 20s, and then that resilience only gets better. To be fair, you can almost train yourself to not let the lows really get you down, but not let the high get you too excited. It's a method of sort of living a level playing field, and that really helps with the journey.
So if you and me were, so I'm not a tradesman, I've never been one, so don't understand the industry in any sense. So if you and I were knowing that, if you and I were sat in a pub having a drink, and I said, "Okay, Jamie, what exactly is it that you do?" How would you answer that?
As in what Appy Quote does?
A sort of value prop of that.
Basically, it saves the tradesperson a hell of a lot of time per week in populating documents. It enables them to send a initial what we call proposals to homeowners extremely fast, but extremely professionally and extremely detailed. And that was really the gap that I noticed in 2017. So I did have a quick look at the competition. Wasn't really that impressed. So most of the applications had started around 2010 onwards for tradespeople. And let's just say 95 onwards, there were the first apps that came out, and then the year 2000, things really sped up. But really, in the industry that we're talking about, it's only a sort of 20-year-old industry, which also excited me because it means there's opportunity, and not everyone's cracked the code, so to speak. So looking at what was on the market, I just thought, the UX design of them wasn't exactly pleasing. So that's one area that we could win on. They didn't really understand the power of comms and what that can do if it's used effectively in a business, any business, but for tradespeople. And really, that's what Appy Quote does. It enables let's talk about dyslexia, for example. So I do have it, non-diagnosed, by the way. My co-founder, same school as me, 6 years apart in age. He was diagnosed with dyslexia at school. So that shows you the sort of period of time I was at school and what didn't happen when I was at school. Didn't get picked up, but it actually got picked up on a management course when I was working for Magnet Kitchens. I was there selling and designing kitchens, which is where a little bit of the sales experience came from in a corporate way. And it got picked up there, and the lady said, just wondering, you've written some documents here. I'm wondering if have you been tested, stuff like that. So for the tradesperson, it's, something like 100,000 diagnosed, but it's probably 10 times that in the tradesperson sector, not really overly talked about in that sector. And it has an impact when you're communicating with the homeowners, and really that's what Appy Quote does. It helps them take that pain away.
That's right. I really like that. It's the reduction of anxiety when proposals have been sent to the end customer, because that everything's spelt correctly, the grammar's right, because people judge you if there's spelling mistakes in proposals and things aren't. And if you can't see that there's an issue, then I think that's very philanthropic in that sense. And I like this idea about helping tradespeople accelerate the proposal acceptance process. And that kind of, if the outcome is for a tradesperson, well, I want to win the business, Appy Quote is a platform that enables you to accelerate, successfully winning business, which is
we also follow up on those proposals. Part of the sales process is to follow up. Initially we executed 3 follow-ups, more likely in the tech world, or people that we try and reach out to sell the concept to, or buy into the concept. It's 7 or 14 touch points before they even register. So that's quite high, but we started with 3, and it works. So again, they don't have time to do it. It's not their first thought to follow up on proposals, but homeowners like it. Actually, anyone likes being followed up, in a sense. Like we think as humans they don't. We don't want to annoy them, but actually it makes them feel quite special that someone has taken the time to follow up.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
So it comes with 3 automatic follow-ups within the system. All the specifications basically are pre-written by copywriters. So as you rightly said, no spelling mistakes. And there was that example with a customer of mine who got the proposal, accepted the work. I was just about to start on the first day and said, I really like your approach. I'm just going to point a couple of things out. It's riddled with spelling mistakes. And before you start the job, I mean, how that makes you feel.
Yeah.
And by the way, he came from a professional, his job is professional services. So he's good at language. He's good at spelling.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's what we're trying to do for people. That's stage 1. There are other plans in the sales and marketing plan and the pipeline linked to the other pain points that tradespeople live.
Yeah. So one of the things that you mentioned, so typically when I interview people, they come from technical backgrounds, so they lack the commercial skills. It's complete opposite for you. So go as far as to suggest that you're not a tech guy. So how have you found the transition in then creating a business or a tech-enabled business, and then starting to, I mean, you mentioned a few different things about platforms, about bugs in there, about this. So how have you found kind of that mindset shift into the kind of the tech world?
Yeah, I really love that question. It's I think, to sort of summarize it quickly, then I'll go a bit deeper. To summarize it, if you're passionate about what you're doing, most people are when they start a business. People don't start a business for the money. Like I think the outside world think you do, friends, family, but it's not the case. The reason that's not the case is because it's so hard that any rational person would give up if it was just linked to the money. It's a hard journey. So it starts with the passion. And if you're passionate about something, you're going to go deep into subjects and areas and content and YouTube videos and stuff that's available online. And that's pretty much what I did. Yes, non-tech background, but I'm passionate about the problem we're trying to solve. So my time was then spent, connecting with people on LinkedIn that had successfully done the journey that I'm on and trying to achieve. Then it's about reading their content so that I'm being educated through LinkedIn by connecting with them in the first place. And that took some time, connecting with these guys, but even my LinkedIn network is educating me on a daily basis. So I go to bed at say 10:30, and I spend half an hour reading through LinkedIn, almost reading a book, about tech and the world that I'm in now.
Right.
So although non-technical background, because I'm passionate about what I'm doing, seriously got up to speed about the tech world, because of the desire and hunger for knowledge, and almost like a sponge, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have been helped, shall we say, with that transition through other people's content and just soaking it all in.
Yeah. It's a really interesting story because, as I said, there's typically tech businesses are founded by technical people. About 2/3, typically in the UK anyway, have sort of dev engineering backgrounds, typically. But then when you get the commercial guys creating businesses, there's just a whole new dynamic. There's a time when I was trying to get my head around an element of blockchain technology, so specifically distributed ledger technology. And as a commercial guy, you want to dived into it, but even diving into it, you just think, I'm more confused than I was before. I didn't know anything about it. I'm now, I'm now kind of over the place. So is there, you mentioned a kind of co-founder earlier. Is there just two of you?
There is, yeah. And I have to say that I missed some bits just now because I sort of gave you the fluffy bit, to be fair, and the nice bit about soaking in the education. But I'll come back to the problems we've had by being a non-technical founder.
For sure.
But to answer your first question, so I think, in 2017, the initial business plan was written by me, and the experience of living that problem is by me. But I was so open at that period of time that I'd met someone at a networking event who was also doing a secondary business, and I thought, nice guy, stuff like that, and we connected, and he actually came to work in the painting business. I was looking for someone, he was looking to do something different, and I just think it just a meant to be journey, to be fair. And together we set that company up in 2018. We went down the bank, we were excited about it, we formed the company, stuff like that. But having gone through the journey now, he brings things that I can't, and I bring things that he can't. And I think there's some stats out there linked to successful tech companies and how many were co-founded or not co-founded. But I think the truth is, the second journey, so to speak, because the focus is on this one and Apicoin to get this, going. But I think in the back of your mind, there's so much knowledge being acquired. I think entrepreneurs think there is going to be another one. There's no doubt about that. Whatever happens with this one. But the initial journey with a co-founder is excellent, because the amount of, let's just say he's top of the WhatsApp group of messages. And my wife is second, by the way, which she's not too happy about. Because the communication on something like this on a daily basis, to have that person just to go, oh, this happened, or what do you think about this, has been probably life-saving and a game changer, to be fair. Even linked to mental health, to be able to reach out to your co-founder, buddy, so to speak, and chew over the fat. It's people, I think, Patrick, can be too focused on equity, I think, when they first get going. This journey, I'm focused on knowledge and experiences, and that's pretty much why I let it go, and we just 50-50 in the business. Off we go. I'm sure a lot of the listeners watch Dragon's Den, and a lot of the times they say things like 100% of nothing is nothing, which is true. So I knew at that point, when I started to understand the valuations of tech businesses, and like a manufacturer, for example, maybe a food company, 3 times EBITDA, maybe their EBITDA is 400 grand, 500 grand, or whatever it may be. I think the valuations of tech business could be times 10, could be times 100. I worked out that 100% nothing is nothing, and 10% of 100 times valuation is pretty good going. So I wasn't worried about keeping the power in terms of the control, and that. So a lot of this journey has been about being open and just letting go, and that has got me a long way so far. That's got me a long way so far.
I heard something sort of similar, and if I could remember who said it, I would attribute it to them now, but I can't, so I won't. It was this idea of, I think it was 3 co-founders, and they said, well, we've split it into thirds, and so out of 100, we've got 100 shares, and we've got 33 each. But if we were to give away 8 shares each, so 24 shares to an investor who then helped us to grow from 100 to 1,000, we would therefore have 25% of 1,000, which is 250, as opposed to our 33. So this idea about bringing people in to have the percentage size is smaller, but the pie is much bigger. And I think that's a really important point for founders, maybe who are going at it alone. Think, well, I don't want to give everything away. This is mine, and I'm going to guard it with every ounce of my being. But you think, well, actually, giving something away could be the difference between you growing and failing. So I think that's an important point.
Yeah, look, there is a saying: if you want to go far, go together. And I think first-time founders, if you've got that mindset that this is just a lifetime journey of experiences and education, you will get another chance at a journey. And at that point, second time round, you got plenty of time left to go out on your own and do something. I'll go back to some of the problems linked to this non-technical founder. So, you reach out and you connect with developers, and we do work with the UK-based developers, and let's just say that as non-technical founders, me and my co-founder, for example, they would send us the specification document, and we would be reading through that thinking, a bit blindsided to this, to be fair. Again, it's language, and it's like 27 pages of a specification about what's going to be built in the MVP.
Okay.
And then they would do workshops and wireframes. Now, I don't know if it's linked to creativity or background, but of course, being a visual person, we did much better with the wireframe, should we say?
Yeah.
And then throughout some of the build, we weren't getting those wireframes, and we came up against problems. And then we realized that next time we build something out, you got to demand that. If that's how you work best, you got to sort of go with what works for you, instead of maybe what the developers like to work with or what they think likes to work with. So there is definitely a gap. Even today, we just started working with a fractional CTO. I think to plug that gap, to be fair, Patrick. For me, on the plus side, non-technical founder, we're not going to overbuild. We're really focused on solving the problem and the core features. And we've done that because we've got happy paying customers. To be fair, if I could go back, I would actually strip the MVP down even more.
Okay.
I think from a hindsight point of view, I think it's too heavy. I think we got too much in there. But linked to the value, the value of the product and the pricing point, it's more or less in line, because it's got a lot of stuff in there. But again, I think there is the slight technical nous missing in translating the written content into executing the product, and we had those problems, to be fair.
Okay. No, well, thank you for sharing those, because I think everyone will have something similar. So especially if you do come from a commercial background, hiring a developer, whether it be an outsourced development shop or a CTO or anything like that, or just one developer, you think, I've got no idea how I can assess the competency of a developer. I've got no idea what to ask them. I don't know what good looks like. I don't know. I don't even know the answers. They could have just said anything, and I'll just nod along and go, yeah, okay, that sounds technical, so I'll believe you. So I can see that people coming from a commercial background, that's going to be where they're going to struggle. Absolutely.
Yeah. Look, we're two generally nice guys, so to speak. But our sort of tolerance level and, shall we say, not, I mean, bullish is the wrong word, but sort of the forwardness of trying to get things done in the way we want them to has definitely changed. From going through that journey, we were probably a little bit standoffish too much. We trusted people too much, that they were going to execute exactly what we said.
Yeah.
And then it gets developed, and you go, well, that's not what we were trying to relay, or that's not, and I think we've tightened that screw really
That's
from the
interesting.
experience.
Yeah, that's really interesting. As you said, as a sort of visual person or someone who responds best to visual stimulus, if something comes on screen and you think that's not what I visualized at all, it induces a level of stress, because you just think that, no, I don't want that. That's not what that's not, which I imagine has a lot of parallels between if you get the design of some, or your vision for interior design of somebody's home, and then they would come in and go, that's not what I want at all. You've completely missed the brief, whatever it might be. I can see that conversation actually being quite a clear allegory actually with developers and then homeowners as well.
Yeah, it's very similar. Like the color scheme, for example, hasn't gone like you suggested, or hasn't gone as you'd planned, or as we discussed. I just think we are, now we're demanding those wireframes every time something gets built. Also, because when you build a solution for solving a problem you've lived, when someone is using the technology and they go, it's doing this, you really feel that pain, because you know how that would feel if you were using it in your own business. So in a sense, individually for me, that's harder to take on a daily basis, but at least I understand the pain point, and it's trying to, fix it for them.
Right. That's really
one
important.
of the things that we've done incredibly well, I think, coming from a non-technical background, is listen to customers.
Okay.
I think, was always going to be customer centric, so to speak, because when it's their pain is my pain, so to speak, so that helps. But what we did is we put people in a foundation group. So the early adopters were placed in a separate group called foundation members, and we openly invited them to talk about AppyQuote and what needed changing, fixing, updating, whatever. And although you can't be swayed by one person's opinion, if there's a collective sort of viewing on something needs to change, or a feature needs updating in this way, we managed to build up a number of feedback from those foundation members that has now been documented in a spreadsheet, and what we called critical development, nice to haves. For example, if someone said, I wish it did this, well, that's a nice to have, and maybe something that can wait for further down the line. So we've documented that feedback, and we're just about to get that estimated. And I think, to be fair, on the number of customers we're on and our efforts route to market, that's going to be the turning point, because stuff that they, at the moment are our X amount of customers, they're using the product, they're loving the product. The next stage is, are they actually shouting about AppyQuote? And if they're not, it's probably because we haven't got those things in there that they want, that needs it to do. And I think that's the next stage for us, get that estimated and get that developed. But for other people listening to this, don't be too hard on yourself, because it's impossible for one person, if you're a solo founder or even co-founders or a team of directors and board, to execute something that you're not meant to execute, something that is perfect. So that's something that we've learned, that, get a thick skin basically and talk to people, get that feedback. Don't be scared to get your product out there and listen to what the market's telling you. We had paying customers from initial launch of MVP.
Right.
So, I would say that's down to knowing what the problem is we're trying to solve. So, for your own market, basically, like founder market fit. What I'm then talking about is trying to get to product market fit, which is the pivots and everything else. So, when we first launched, it was tough to take. Why doesn't it do this? Why does But don't be so hard on yourself trying to execute something that's perfect. It's not meant to be.
I think I agree. I agree. I've always subscribed to. So I think you and I are quite different in terms of. You said you're more of an ideas man, and I'm not. I'm more of a sort of operationalize those ideas, and so I don't. For our company, Founder Revenue Academy, my other two co-founders are much more ideas guys. One from a technical perspective, one from a more kind of visionary entrepreneurial perspective. But I'm the one that can take that idea and think, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And so together, it all kind of works quite well. But the gear I wanted to switch to now, which I think is important for anyone at this stage, is those first few sales. So between this MVP to product market fit journey, it has to be founder-led sales. So I wanted to really pick your brains on how you are going about getting those first few customers over, because you have it sounds like you've got a marketplace, you've got to build the sort of demand side, and you've got to build the supply side. So you're kind of selling to both sides of the marketplace. So just interested to know how you found the journey, or how you're currently finding the journey of founder-led sales.
So one of the first things that we did is Instagram page. And before we launched our MVP, we managed to build 2,500 followers there.
Okay.
So we were building an audience before the product. And I think a lot of people's mistake is they build the product before the audience. And then they expect, build it and they will come philosophy. Even though we built an audience before we built the MVP, we've still, found it hard to get the numbers up, shall we say. That covers various reasons, but the founder-led sales were initially direct messaging on Instagram to that following, and the content, by the way, that had been going sort of a year and a half of content. Then we sort of ramped up the content. So that's my co-founder's expertise in terms of, making that content, posting, editing as well, video content. I would sit here and do videos, and then he would edit them and post them out. Storytelling has worked really well for us. So, rather than continuously just banging on about features and trying to sell the product, we're storytelling about the problem and then the solution right at the end, the features, the product, the benefits of the product. And by the way, storytelling doesn't have to be hard. So I use voice notes. I might be going about my daily basis, and a thought would come to mind, and I would just get that out instantly. Voice note, send it to my co-founder. We use that as a podcast, right? Because budget, stuff like that, there's courses to do podcasts, there's all the equipment you need. Well, we used a free app on the iPhone called Voice Notes, and he posted it out as a podcast.
Right. Okay.
And some of our customers in Instagram were listening to that, and when we followed up with them, they said, I really resonated with that story. I also live that problem. Let's have a look at Happy Quote, and that worked really well.
Let's interrupt. How did you know that Instagram was the platform that you wanted to kind of double down on, your sort of market, if you like? How did you know it'd be Instagram as opposed to another kind of social media platform?
I think, to be fair, that's the one that we tackled because we understood it, but it's actually very very easy just to sort of do a follow to follow tactic as well.
Okay.
Facebook is a little bit different, follow to follow tactic, and Facebook is we haven't done so well on Facebook. I'll be honest.
Mm.
We've got something like 176 likes, and when we spoke about things like, well, why don't you build a separate page from your family, friends, and dogs and holiday picture,
Yeah.
and connect with decorators and build it up that way, put some content on there. But people are savvy these days. They know what you're doing. They know that
Mm.
you're building a separate Facebook page just to sell them the business. It doesn't. I think the consumer, Patrick, has got more intelligent. They're really savvy, and they cotton on to things like this.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's linked to the way of the world, and people want more for their money, so they look more and they investigate more, and they look deeper and they look for longer rather than just going, I'm going to buy that. That was probably
Yeah.
the case before 2007. But yeah, Instagram has worked well for us. Direct messages,
Yeah.
not just one, by the way, like, one, probably a 3 sequence follow-up, reminders, stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
The content is good on there. If you had a graphic designer or a branding guy look at our Instagram, he would say he would probably scrap it,
Right.
But for us, it was just about doing what we can do linked to our capabilities to keep the cost down.
I think that the rawer form, I think people resonate with more because it's more human. When things are heavy produced and there's all kind of quite cool looking stuff, but then you start listening to the content and you think, well, there's no substance in here. It's just all sort of hype. And then it gets to the end
Yeah,
of the video and it's sort of quite deflated because I haven't actually learned anything on the back of this. And because you guys have, what's nice is a very specific niche, then only the people that are listening to your content are likely going to be in your niche, which is kind of what you want.
yeah.
I think that's no, I think that's really important. Okay, so Instagram's there. So because it's kind of founder led, where and how do you go about refining and executing on your lead generation process?
So one of the other things we did is through the tech incubator, we built a landing page about the concept, and do not be afraid of selling what you're doing and getting the concepts out there before it's there. We had so many discussions and thoughts about, we need an NDA in place. We need, I'm worried about talking about that. It's all irrelevant. No one's got the time to steal your idea, because at that stage it's just an idea. And so don't be worried about that. Just go and do and promote yourself as much as you can. The website had a MailChimp hook to it, so I spent a long time studying. One of my passions is sales and marketing. Dan Kennedy, Chris Cardell, and I used some of their strategies in Happy Quote. For example, lead generation hook. Like we wrote a book called 27 Ways to Grow Your Trade Business.
Okay.
And they took that hook, and the MailChimp was building up. And our incubators at the time said you need to get to 1,000 email addresses before investors start looking at it, in terms of interest. And we got to 250 in about 2 months.
Yeah.
That's linked to sending people their, Instagram, stuff like that. And it then was a bit sluggish for a while, to be honest with you, until we started doing, when we launched the MVP, and we started to execute a sales process in place. And part of that sales process, the back end, was to use, if someone said, yes, I'll give you permission to send me an email. If we couldn't get hold of them, several touch points, shall we say, the end part of that sales process is they end up in MailChimp, and you do 2 MailChimps a week, and they get to hear from you anyway.
As
So
a sort of campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I think anyone that's like listening to this, you can go and learn MailChimp pretty quickly.
Yeah.
To be fair, you've got tools to help you write these days, and I learnt MailChimp, and now I'm sending out 2 a week, and some of those sort of prospects in the sales pipeline are purchasing a demo 3 months later because they're in the pipeline.
Yeah, yeah. I think the nurture process is very difficult. I've been asked the question, well, how long should a nurture process last? And the only answer I can give, it depends on where the customer is, or it depends on how long the customer needs to be nurtured until they're ready to have more of an active buying conversation, which could be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months.
Yeah.
So I think that's no, that's really interesting.
But
I
when we
think with
first launched, I think we were too set on, if he's not going to buy this now, or if they don't buy now, we've lost them forever.
yeah,
Hasn't been the case. You know, obviously, if you get a clear no, opt out, you got to put them in a separate spreadsheet, and you're not going to, you know, contact them again. But
yeah,
I would say out of 1,000 people we contacted last year, Patrick, about 250 of those were opt out, and
okay,
the rest were contacted, but they're in this like cycle of maybe not ready to buy yet, or some of them did buy it, some of them did buy it and churned, you know.
yeah.
But that's a lot of data still to sort of keep touching base with on MailChimp. And
And
as
to be
we
clear, sorry, to be clear, the people on the mail list, they are, is it a combination of tradespeople and homeowners, or developers of homes, or what is the sort of makeup of that list?
So just tradespeople, and the
Right.
initial website linked to the incubator and what was landing page was actually multi-trade. So
Okay.
even Instagram is multi-trade. So we're giving that data to our investor and saying, look, you know, there's a plumber in Australia that has signed up for, you know, the concept
Yeah.
and the ebook. If you can separate that data as well, and show a potential investor, or your investor, that you have someone interested, that's only going to help you with raising capital and stuff like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But if you
No, it
don't have
sounds.
the data, you can't show them.
Yeah. I think that the data set and the cleanliness of the data set is such an underestimated thing, and it's one of those with every business that I've worked with, which is what, dozens personally, but as the academy for Founder Revenue Academy, I mean, it's over 100. But I think that a lot of founders specifically don't give enough thought to how their data is architectured from today and how it needs to be done in about 12 months.
Yeah,
Because if you've architectured it in the right way, in terms of it's filed correctly and you're diligent with how you do things and naming conventions of files and all that kind of thing, it saves you months,
yeah.
even a year into your journey, because you can find everything and everything's kind of compartmentalized in that sense, as opposed to a complete mess.
And on that point, it was a complete mess when we launched.
Yeah,
But we
yeah,
spent, you know, we launched MVP last April to market. But
yeah,
even yesterday, I was in that spreadsheet improving it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's sort of linked to an obsession, really. If you're obsessed, you do things like that at 10 o'clock at night. If you're not obsessed about your journey, probably go and do something different.
yeah.
Because
I think yeah,
you
no,
need those little tweaks and those little improvements and those sort of things that you do, um, to make it work, basically.
mm,
And you know, we're still refining it. We're still trying to improve it. You know, collectively we work on a shared spreadsheet, but before we weren't. So we
mm.
said that that's not working, and you know, continuously drilling down on trying to improve what we're doing. But it wasn't polished at the beginning. It just wasn't.
Yeah. Well, I think that people don't necessarily know how to polish something in the long run. Oh, sorry, initially. But then when you look back with the benefit of hindsight, you just think, well, I can suddenly see how I can improve this. So it might be going from I don't know, from a shared Google sheet into an Airtable or something like that, because you can suddenly manipulate the data much better, or you can segment it in a better way, or figuring out how we just have sort of a company called Zapier. If we put, like, from our sign up sheet, we can put a Zap over, and so it comes directly into Airtable, and then it goes to Airtable into our CRM. All those kind of little operational things, which, again, you mentioned it. I don't think founders should beat themselves up too much, because after a few months of trading, you will see where the bolts are that need to be tightened across all areas of the business. It's just hard to see
100%, Patrick. Yeah.
or hypothesize what they're going to be at the outset. So it's interesting to see how
I really love the way you've said that. So that means you got to have faith in those things, that the bolts that need tightening, that they will be visible at some point, and then your job is to jump on them quick enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
To jump on them quick enough to close them down. So I use the phrase at the moment, firefighting.
Yeah.
Which, from an entrepreneur's point of view, I'm never going to post anything about that, because real firefighters do their job, and that's dangerous and stuff like that. But it is firefighting on a daily basis to sort of close down the issues to be able to progress. And then you balance, what we're doing at the moment is balancing between still outreaching to market versus firefighting. So the firefighting will slow you down. There's no doubt about that. But if you don't firefight that problem and close it down, you'll be slowed down in the end anyway.
You're right. You're totally right. It's the awareness that just because there are fires going in your business doesn't mean that you've got a bad business. It just means that you have a business, because there will always be fires to fight if you're really early stage. I was speaking to a chief revenue officer of they're 150 million ARR business last night, and he has fires to put out all over the place in his business. But he's thinking in terms of, well, I need to put a fire out in my US region, and then late at night when APAC's woken up, I need to do it in there. So he says that never stops. Like, there's always things happening, but the fires are there because people are doing stuff. So it's, we just got to go and extinguish them. So I think that, I reckon we could sort of converse on this subject for hours. But what I wanted to do is just some of the key things I think that he mentioned, which was, and this is not an exhaustive list at all, which is first really understanding the problem that you were mentioning about having lived and breathed this problem. You can communicate it with conviction, which I think for a founder is really, really important. The second thing which I picked up, which was this, if coming from a commercial background, is demanding wireframes. That kind of resonated, because I think that would be something that would allow commercial founders save a lot of hassle, knowing that they can do that up front. Very much listening to the customers, and how savvy consumers are, or the end customer actually is now, in terms of investigating more. Therefore, having an effective nurture campaign is critical for the business. Those are sort of some of the key points I picked up.
I just want to touch on that last one. I appreciate you summarizing those, but the last one is interesting because, influencers, shall we say. So, and by the way, there's a lot of big tech companies that use influencers, and they do it well and it works. But at our level, what I noticed is some of our paying customers knew who the influencers were. And also the rest of the market know who the influencers were. So when they was, have you tried AppyQuote? It's just hot air. Like that's what, they knew. Is that real or is that fake? Are they getting paid? People are now saying, are the influencers getting paid to talk about the product? So you have to do it a different way around. And the way around that we're trying to do it is harder and it's slower. Trying to get that genuine customer to genuinely love AppyQuote and then go and talk about it, because the rest of the market knows that he's a genuine guy or girl.
It's that authenticity piece, I think, goes a long way, and it can be sometimes an intangible, but people feel that, people resonate with authentic people for sure, especially in a maybe on a platform like Instagram, which doesn't necessarily have all the authenticity people would want from that. So to be able to show the difference is very, very important. So look, let's there's one thing that I wanted to ask you, and then I'll sort of come back to so you're able to give you an opportunity to close out yourself. But the question is, what is one thing that you wished you could have avoided?
Being too feature happy. You know, I think I wish we had avoided trying to cram too much in an MVP.
Okay.
I really do, because at the moment, you know, we're trying to get user usage data, but our developers said you got a plugin for that, and that's going to cost you X. Well, we're not going to do that until we get 250 people on at least to get a rounded feedback who's using what. And we're doing manual surveys and stuff like that. But the reason I say that, Patrick, is because the feedback we got is probably more important to execute than the shiny features that we managed to get in the MVP.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
And then, is the budget there to do that feedback because you went too heavy with an MVP in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the things yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think a lot of people can might be sort of nodding along and agreeing with it, or actually thinking, do you know what, I'm thinking about stuffing a bit more into my MVP. Let's strip it back to its absolute bare bones, and maybe focus 20% on strategy, 80% on execution, to your sort of earlier point, rather than the other way around. You know,
yeah.
That's really interesting, Jamie. Look, I really appreciate you carving the time out to speak with me on this topic. But wanted to kind of give you an opportunity. Is there anything specifically you'd like to plug or endorse, and where can people find you and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So thanks likewise for this opportunity. It's great to be able to talk about the journey, and if it helps other people, that pleases me. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Jamie Mintrim. I look forward to some connections there. I'm happy for emails on some of the stuff that we've discussed, or any questions at all. And you can reach me at jamie@appyquote.com. Our website is www.appyquote.com, so you can go and have a look at what we're doing.
Cool. Well, we'll have all those links in the show notes when we publish this and when it goes live, so everyone's kind of got that. So with that, again, Jamie, look, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Cheers.